Hello everyone, hope all are well. Be safe. Today's topic is free will an illusion? Well, from the human perspective, that would seem to be a yes and a no. And yet, from another perspective, from a tachyonic perspective, anything and everything that has and will take place has already, or has it? You see, tachyons travel faster than light, which means they move faster than the tick rate of time. Stating this in another way, tachyons can traverse the universe in less time than it takes for time to pass. Therefore, from a tachyon's perspective, our time is, well, mute.
From a tachyon's point of view, time is space and space is time. Therefore, a tachyon can move forward or backward in time as easily as we move forward or backward in space.
That's fascinating
in
to
fact,
think about.
We have 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time-like dimension. When you transition to a tachyon's point of view, the spatial dimensions collapse into a single dimension, and the time dimension expands into 3. That means we technically have 7 dimensions in the universe, 3 unique spatial dimensions, 3 unique time-like dimensions, and 1 sort of in-between whose nature depends on the point of view.
That sure opens up a big Pandora's box, doesn't it? Because a lot of people are going to wonder, well, what does that mean about reality?
Or free will.
Free will. What does that mean about, do we live in a simulation? No, we don't.
Here's the thing. The problem with the so-called simulation hypothesis, and this isn't the topic of the video, but I just want to mention this. The problem with it is that you cannot confirm or deny it if you accept it. Like, in other words, it's basically a belief system. Because if someone thinks that we are in a simulation, or seriously thinks that we might be, then any argument you make against it, they can explain away as a glitch in the system or something like that. And it cannot be assailed. Yeah. It cannot be attacked. That's not science.
No.
The whole point of science, the difference between a hypothesis and a theory, is that a theory is testable. It's falsifiable. And as a theory, there's some way how you can do an experiment, or even a thought experiment that might disprove the theory. If there's no way to possibly test the theory and maybe disprove it, then there's no way to find out if it's fact or not. Whereas
that's why they call it a belief system.
And so it's completely ungrounded. And also, from a more philosophical point of view, it's kind of almost childish. I don't mean that offensively. I mean that it's something that, just like how you develop a new technology, and in hindsight we can look back how people rushed, like radios developed. They tried to use it for everything, and a lot of people, well, suffered under not so legitimate medical practices. Radioactivity, same thing. And right now, this cyberphilia is their modern day equivalent. We're rushing into all electronic devices and electronic and computer everything, even to the point of thinking, well, we have computers, maybe, and this universe seems to be similar to the computers. Maybe we're in a giant computer. But that's very naive thinking, because just because we develop a technology, say, oh, it's like the universe. Maybe that's what's the reality. Or maybe it's that the computer mimics reality. I mean, it's not a very thoughtful point of view.
No, anyone who actually takes that idea and really thinks it through will eventually come to the same conclusion that no, we do not live in a computer or a simulation.
And also, if you say, like, well, maybe there's some kind of extra-dimensional entity that's... Well, for one, that's just kind of like a deity again. It's just a belief system again. And if you're talking about, well, maybe it's self-organizing, well, then you're not saying we're in a simulation anymore. So in other words, if you try to make it work, you just end up coming to the conclusion that it doesn't seem very logical. So, on to the topic of free will. I have some notes here. Can I go ahead?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so is free will an illusion? From the point of view of a tachyon, absolutely. A tachyon lives in a timeless, spaceless place where all that ever will be and all that ever was is all simultaneous. Time, again, is space to a tachyon. Therefore, the past, the future, the present, it's all the same. It just forms a gigantic, unchanging, eternal, immutable hyperstructure. From that point of view, then of course there's no such thing as free will. It's just as much as an illusion as time itself. However, flip our point of view, and we find, from the point of view of positive space-time and positive matter, that such an eternal structure cannot exist. It cannot remain static, because all matter is inherently subject to a, well, non-determinacy, a chaos, a regularity, a well-regulated regulationlessness. And so such an unchanging structure is physically impossible within positive space-time. And the hyperspaces of the past and the future are not real. They're not physical to positive matter. The only thing that's physical is the transition point, where hyperspace of the past becomes a hyperspace of the future. Or, sorry, the other way around. Hyperspace of the future becomes hyperspace of the past. That's the only physically meaningful point in time for positive matter.
The only tangible point.
The only physically meaningful. Everything else, it doesn't exist effectively. The past is semi-real in the sense that things that happen in the past affect the present, but things that happen in the future do not affect the present. At least directly, like things that already have happened affect what's going on today, where things in the future haven't happened yet, and so by definition don't affect the present. Because
and yet, at the
thing
same
is, matter
time,
produces not only an inward but also a futureward pull, and so it creates a bias, arrow of time. You have this dragging into the future, and as a result, anything other than the present, the transition point, is unphysical. But
hence, you mentioned what you just mentioned. We are referring to as the arrow of time and gravity.
So, from that point of view, because the fact that anything in the future is beyond a certain point unknowable and just unknowable chaos, then of course free will is real. Because if it was any other way, everything would just be chaos. So, like, in other words, if the future is unpredictable, then of course you have a free will to make choices right now. But here's the thing. The beauty of the relativity of the cosmos is that both perspectives are in fact equally real and equally valid. Many points of view can be simultaneously and without contradiction perfectly true. From the point of view of tachyons, from their reference frames, from the reference frame of a tachyon, there is no such thing as free will or time. From the reference frame of positive matter, of course there has to be free will and time. But both are equally true. And that's the ultimate answer. Is free will an illusion? Yes and no. To us, no. To tachyons, definitely.
Now for everyone to wrap their head around that.
Well, it's just like how, is something moving? Yes and no. From its point of view? No. From our point of view? Yeah. It's relativity. That's the fundamental. The beauty of it is that it's self-consistent. It's self-contained. You don't need any assumptions. All you need to know is the relative motion of things. That's it. There's no assumptions necessary.
Yes, and that therefore time or at least free will, if the universe wasn't structured this way, it would not exist. Normal positive matter, what we're familiar with, would never exist.
Yeah, that goes down to the theory, our theory, our contribution to the addition to the quantum relativity field. Basically, that below to give a brief summary, as it overlaps with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Below the layer of quarks, we have preons, but in our theory, they're tachyonic.
With smaller
in other words, we have ultra elements. According to our work, there is ultra elementary particles, and they're tachyonic. But it doesn't stop there, because if you try to make the simplest model possible, because you always want to start there, and then add complexity only as you need to. The simplest possible model seems to be that you have a repeating kind of structure. Well, kind of like, I heard one person describe it this way, like a copy sheet. Each layer is very similar to one below. The preons are very similar to the quarks. And then you have sub-preons and sub-sub-preons and so on. It goes down only a few layers before you can actually explain all properties of the matter without needing arbitrary insertions. Each one is explained by the behavior of the one below. And so the number of properties gradually diminishes until you have just strings. Yeah, string theory is back, but it's in a different form. The strings are tiny tachyonic vibrations of the fundamental structure of the universe itself. Now, here's the question. What lies below that? And it seems like the only nice answer, the only answer that doesn't add more assumptions, is that there's technically only one particle in the universe. A initial singularity, an Ur singularity, the singularity that the universe formed from. It's all there is. It's the initial singularity of the universe's creation, the creation singularity. And this singularity, it's a single particle. Because it's a singularity, and technically it's the only real singularity, it is everywhere at the same time. And it can be, and because from our point of view, it can move at an infinite speed, it can be in any place in any time all at once. Every time, every place.
Everywhere.
So all matter is ultimately, all these strings and the particles they make up are technically just this same particle dancing around and interacting with itself, within itself. It's kind of confusing, but the more you think about it and give yourself time to think about it, it kind of makes a certain nice, consistent sense. It doesn't require any external assumptions.
Yeah, that's right. Our viewers, if you really want to think about it, that's a fantastic idea. Put some thought to it. Think about it. Put it in the back burner of your mind for 6 months.
A year.
Maybe. We've been working on this. Yeah, a year. We've been working on this a long time.
But you can actually go further. That's if you just limited to 7 dimensions. You have more than 7, as many versions of string theory do suggest. You don't just have the universe, you have a multiverse filled with, well, absolutely nothing. It's an intra-universal space filled with absolutely nothing except for the universes. And the only distance between universes is due to their own spreading out interlapping zones. The bits between where there isn't any universe at all, not even the faintest universal energy, is full of absolutely nothing and therefore has no actual presence. And
no
nothing
structure.
There. So, in this multiversal space, then in that space, what was, from a 7-dimensional point of view, an infinite speed of this creation singularity, this Earth singularity, is no longer infinite. It's now just some finite but very fast speed. And that is part of the expansion of the universe. Basically, you have this singularity that expands out within the multiverse at some finite speed. And whereas inside it seems infinite.
Just for those who are not familiar with the term multiverse, multiverse just simply
a
means
space full of more than one universe.
More than one universe.
Now, the difference... There also, I want to say this. It's very unlikely that there's any such thing as alternate realities. Because any possible... While there are more than one time dimension, so you can't have parallel universes, it seems. All these parallel universes are still in one universe because they share the same Big Bang. The same Earth singularity. And therefore, they're all in the same universe. Yes. And also, because... there's a saying in physics, in science in general, everything that is possible is mandatory, but almost everything is impossible. And therefore, if it's possible for the universe to expand not just in one time dimension, but in all the different combinations, then it must do that, and it must do that from the moment it can, which means any possible space that you might put in alternate reality is already filled. Which means that, there's alternate realities, but they diverge from our universe, our slice of the universe, at the very beginning. There's no alternate version of you that's slightly different. When you make a choice, you make a choice, and in positive space-time, that's the only reality. In negative space-time, of course, it's all already there.
Not to get off into that conversation, but to state that there might be an alternative, or as some people might say, an alter ego in another dimension, that really opens up a huge can of worms. No, it doesn't,
because the simple answer is that it's impossible. Because any possible space where you might put an alternate you, an alternate reality, is already filled and has been from the very beginning.
That's what I was referring to.
So the can of worms doesn't have any validity. So, and this leads to another interesting point, is that there is then a kind of time for tachyons. Though they don't experience time as we do, from a extra universal perspective, from the multiverse, tachyons still move over some sort of time, and the universe expands at some finite speed, not infinite.
They have
in a sense, strange kind of time of their own. And in that sense, from tachyons, there's still a kind of free will. It's just that for tachyons, there's only one moment of free will, so to speak. But it's not that it's that initial Earth singularity would be the only truly creative moment within the tachyonic realm. Obviously, in positive space-time, every choice you make is a creative moment. Even a machine can make a creative decision. Yep.
Which they have.
That's for another video. So, that's not to say the universe is most definitely not self-aware. It's just, it may have a kind of consciousness, a kind of quantum computer filling all of the universe, but given the given the scale and scope that we're talking about, and the difference in between the time in our slicing universe versus in the tachyonic slice, any real self-awareness is basically impossible. And so the universe, it maybe has a kind of elemental consciousness, but it's more like an algorithm, more like a program than a thinking consciousness. And every time whenever the universe forms, and that's going to be a whole other field of study, is like what conditions in the multiverse cause it to form. It's kind of like you might have what conditions in the normal universe cause stars to form or black holes to form. What conditions in the multiverse cause universes to form? That's a whole new field to explore. And with this new theory base, we might finally have mathematical tools to start to actually explore that.
Explore that, and that would open us up to understand our own universe even more so. And what does it mean to understand our own universe? Well, it means that we can do much more. Suddenly, outer space is no longer this hostile, cold, inhospitable environment, but it's something that we can subdue, not as a negative,
something we can overcome and master. Just like how the
and
ocean is
master.
no great challenge to us anymore. Even Antarctica is no real challenge.
Right.
Where at one time those were very difficult things. Now the deep sea and outer space are starting to become... We're just beginning the process of mastering them. It's ironic that the deep sea is about as hard to master as outer space. The irony there, huh?
Yeah, it really is.
Well,
we have a whole new dynamic to deal with.
Yeah.
Pressure.
So, yeah. It's a very interesting subject of...
So, to recap, to summarize, from a tachyon's perspective...
There's only one moment of free will.
It appears as though... One moment, that's right. But from a sublight, positive matter
every choice you make is free will.
That's right, you have complete free will. Although, I'd like to throw in, because we're on the topic of free will, if a person chooses to back out of their driveway every day without looking at this main road they're backing into, in a weird way, they have destined their future to probably some form of collision, whether they're run over something or something in the road slams into
that's
their
right.
vehicle.
And it also...
So hold on one second. So in that regard, you have eliminated your free will through this choice.
Of course, therein...
choice of ignorance.
Of course, therein lies the thing that you chose to eliminate free will, which means you're free. You had free will to choose to get rid of your free will.
So free will also has a psychological implication there as well.
And also, like another example, if a little more direct, if you jump out of an airplane without a parachute and without any kind of rescue means, like, you are now doomed to hit the ground. Nothing you do from then on. So in that regard, your free will has been sharply limited by a choice you made.
And we can't throw in a few tiny examples out of an entire 1,000-year history where someone survived jumping out of an airplane.
Well, the point is,
you
can always think of a scenario where someone could make a choice that would leave them that would sharply limit their further choices. I mean, they could still choose to flip over and do things within, like, they could still do things on the way down.
Right. They have free will all the way until they hit the ground, which is, of course, at that moment they've eliminated their free will. Well, so we are at the 23 mark. Should we...
do you have any last concluding remarks to make?
No, I think we have covered that pretty good. I think we should let everyone know that eventually, at some point, we will make a video, a little more comprehensive video about this topic.
That'd be interesting. A video about... I have plans for that video about a comprehensive video about AI, like biological AI, biological artificial AI, constructed artificial AI, cyborgs, artificial humans, machines, and then maybe that can be followed up by another video maybe you can make about, because it's a topic you have a lot of interest and knowledge on, about consciousness and free will, like generally, like aside from robots.
Yes.
That would be an interesting pair of videos.
Yes, or even the psychology of what it's going to be like for those who at some point decide to integrate themselves into a machine. But that's another topic. Boy, we could get off into that.
That's why that whole topic needs a video on its own.
It really does.
All right, I guess we can wrap it up then.
Yeah. So we decided to make this podcast shorter. We're going to try to do a podcast per week. Our schedule is very busy. We originally thought we were going to publish one every Thursday, Perhaps Friday is going to work
we'll
better
see.
for us.
We'll see how it goes next week.
And on that note, thank you again for listening. Keep wandering about space. Thank you. Bye.